The urinary system consists of a pair of kidneys. So we have a pair of kidney, then we have a pair of ureter. So there is right and left kidney, right and left ureter, the urinary bladder and urethra. So this forms the urinary system. Now coming to the functions of kidney. So kidney helps in purification of blood by ultrafiltration, and it removes the waste, metabolic waste products. And kidney also conserves and maintains body fluid and electrolyte. It maintains fluid electrolyte balance, and it has endocrinal function also. It secretes erythropoietin, which helps in the formation of red blood cells, and erythropoietin production depends on the level of blood oxygen. Then the renin secreted by kidneys convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1, and it helps in regulating the blood pressure. Then the kidney secretes enzyme 1-hydroxylase that converts 25-hydroxyvitamin D3 produced by liver to its active form, that is 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D3. In this slide we will see the gross structure of the kidney. So each kidney is covered by a capsule. So this is the capsule of the kidney. It is entirely covered by capsule. It is bean shaped. Now this is the medial border of the kidney. So the medial border has hilum. So hilum is the structure through which blood vessels and nerves enter the kidney. Renal pelvis continues as ureter, and the space that occupies the blood vessels, nerves and the renal pelvis at the hilum of the kidney is known as renal sinus. So this is the renal sinus. Now renal pelvis, this part, renal pelvis is divided into major calyces. So these are the major calyces, and the major calyces are then divided into minor calyces. So these are the minor calyces, and the conical projections of the kidney called papilla. Okay, now these papilla, they open into minor calyces. The kidney has outer reddish brown cortex. So the outer reddish brown is the cortex, and the when we take the cut section, longitudinal section of the kidney, we can see the outer reddish brown area is the renal cortex. So the outer area is renal cortex and the inner pale area is medulla. So in this slide we will see the tissue or structures related to the cortex. Now there is a term called cortical arch or renal arch. So the tissue of the renal cortex which lies between the base of the pyramid and the surface of the kidney. So this tissue is known as cortical arch or cortical lobule. The second term is medullary ray. So the cortical arch shows light and dark striations. The light lines are known as medullary rays. These are again triangular. Their apex is towards the surface of the kidney and their base continues with the striations of the pyramid. And each medullary ray is made up of collecting tubules and ducts of Bellini. Then the second term is renal column. So these are the renal columns. The tissue which lies between the adjacent pyramids is known as renal column, and it is also known as column of Bertini. Then comes the renal lobe. So one pyramid which is capped with the cortex. This is the renal cortex which caps the renal pyramid. So this area is known as renal lobe. Then comes renal lobule. Now the area of cortical arch, which is bounded on each side by the interlobular blood vessel, is known as the lobule. So it has on either side interlobular blood vessels, and in the central part there is medulla. The kidney shows outer cortex and inner pale area known as medulla. So the inner aspect of the longitudinal section of kidney is known as medulla. So this pale medulla is formed by 8 to 10 triangular areas of renal tissue known as renal pyramids. So the renal pyramids form the medullary part, and they are 8 to 10 in number. They are triangular in shape. Now the renal pyramids, they show striations. They are pale. They are conical. Their base is directed towards the cortex. So this is the pyramidal base, and it is directed towards the cortex, whereas the apex or papilla of the pyramid is directed towards the renal pelvis, and it fits into the minor calyx. So this is the pelvis, renal pelvis, and this one is the papillae. Okay, so the renal papillae or the pyramid, its apex is known as papillae, and it is directed towards the renal pelvis, and it fits into the minor calyces. Now the pyramid shows striations, and these striations pass radially towards the apex. The striations are caused by U-shaped loop of Henle's collecting tubule and duct of Bellini. It is also formed by the arteriole recti and vena recti. The renal papillae is the apical portion of the pyramid that projects into the minor calyces and indent it. The tip shows perforations which drain the urine to the calyx. Kidney is formed by nephrons. So nephron is the structural and functional unit of the kidney, and there are three types of nephrons: cortical or subcapsular, juxtamedullary, and midcortical. So the nephron has Bowman's capsule and renal tubule. Bowman's capsule is bilayered. Its outer layer is known as parietal layer. It is lined by simple squamous epithelium, and the inner layer is the visceral layer, which is lined by podocytes. And the space between these two layers is the Bowman's space. And it has renal tubules: proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule. So nephron is the basic or structural functional unit of the kidney. Apart from that, in the Bowman's capsule we have a capillary tuft with mesangial cells known as glomerulus, and the renal tubule, that is distal convoluted tubule, further continues as collecting tubule. So the components of kidney are glomerulus, which is the capillary tuft with mesangial cell, then the nephron formed by Bowman's capsule and renal tubules, and the collecting tubules. These form the kidney. Nephron is the structural and functional unit of the kidney, and there are about 2 million nephrons in each kidney. These nephrons are formed by renal corpuscles and long renal tubules. Now, renal tubules include proximal convoluted tubule, ascending descending limb and the loop of Henle, and the distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubule connect to the collecting tubule, and based on the location of renal corpuscle, these nephrons are classified into three types based on the location. They can be cortical or subcapsular, then second is juxtamedullary, and third is midcortical or intermediate nephron. So cortical nephrons are those in which the renal corpuscle lie in the outer cortex. They have short loop of Henle, and they extend only in the outer part of a medulla. Whereas juxtamedullary nephrons are those in which renal corpuscles lie at the junction of cortex and medulla. Here they have long loops of Henle and ascending thin segment is also long. They help in maintenance of urine concentration. This is important. The juxtamedullary nephrons help in maintenance of urine concentration. Then the intermediate or mid-cortical nephrons are those in which renal corpuscles line the mid region of the cortex. They have average length of the loop of Henle. Thus, in the cortical nephron, the loop of Henle is short. In juxtamedullary, the loop of Henle and ascending limb is long and they maintain the urine concentration. And in mid-cortical, they have average length of loop of Henle. Renal corpuscle is a spherical structure. It has glomerulus, that is tuft of blood capillaries. Then the Bowman's capsule is double-layered covering of the glomerulus. The glomerular capsule has two layers and the space between these two layers is known as Bowman's space or urinary space. Glomerulus is spherical ball of tuft of blood capillaries, and as you can see in the diagram, it receives blood from afferent arteriole and drains into efferent arteriole. Diameter of efferent arteriole is less than afferent arteriole, and the vascular pole is the site of entry-exit of afferent and efferent arterioles in the glomerulus. It is referred as vascular pole, and urinary pole is opposite to the vascular pole. Bowman's capsule continues as proximal convoluted tubule, and this pole is known as urinary pole. So as we know that Bowman's capsule is bilayered, the outer parietal layer is lined by simple squamous epithelium and the inner visceral layer is lined by podocyte processes, and the space in between these two layers of the Bowman's capsule is known as Bowman's space or urinary space, and it has two poles. Vascular pole is the point of exit and entry of afferent efferent arteriole, and urinary pole is where the Bowman's capsule continues as proximal convoluted tubule. Filtration apparatus of the kidney is formed by three components: endothelium of glomerular capillaries, glomerular basement membrane, and visceral layer of Bowman's capsule. So the endothelium of glomerular capillaries are fenestrated. They have large pores of about 70 to 90 nanometers. Then the basement membrane of the glomerulus has fused lamina of endothelium and podocytes of the Bowman's capsule, and it forms the principal component of filtration barrier and it prevents the filtration of plasma proteins. Then the third layer is again important. It is visceral layer of Bowman's capsule and it's lined by podocytes. The Bowman's capsule has two layers. Outer parietal layer is lined by simple squamous epithelium and the inner visceral layer is lined by podocytes. So the podocytes have processes called pedicles or foot process. They exit or they extend towards the glomerular capillaries, and there are filtration slits, elongated spaces of about 25 nanometer between the foot processes, and these slits help in ultrafiltration. Then the filtration slit membrane or slit diaphragm is the span. It spans the slit between the adjacent foot processes, and the glomerular filtration apparatus is semi-permeable. It is a barrier that has discontinuous endothelium and epithelium, and it has continuous basement membrane. The glomerular capillaries are held together by mesangial cell and their extracellular matrix. These mesangial cells, along with its extracellular matrix, is known as mesangium. Mesangial cells work like pericytes of capillaries, and they are embedded in the basal lamella of capillary. The Lassus cells are those mesangial cells which lie along vascular pole, and these cells form a part of extraglomerular apparatus. The main function of mesangial cell is it is phagocytic. It phagocytoses aggregated proteins from glomerular basement membrane, and it supports the podocytes. It secretes interleukin 1 and platelet derived growth factors. And unlike the phagocytic cells derived from monocyte, the mesangial cells are derived from smooth muscle cell. They are precursor of smooth muscles, and the mesangial cells have angiotensin II receptor, and these cells help in regulation of blood flow through the glomerulus. The juxtaglomerular apparatus is a group of specialized cells. It is present near the vascular pole of renal corpuscle, and it consists of three components: juxtaglomerular cells, macula densa, and extraglomerular mesangial cells or Lassis cells. So the juxtaglomerular cells are modified smooth muscle cells of tunica media of afferent arterioles lying close to macula densa. So a part of distal convoluted tubule at the junction of straight and convoluted part of vascular pole of renal corpuscle between afferent and efferent arteriole is the part where juxtaglomerular cells are there. In this region, the muscle cells in the wall of afferent arteriole are modified. They are large, round, epithelioid, they have spherical nucleus, and they are innervated by unmyelinated adrenergic nerve fibers. These cells are known as juxtaglomerular cells, and their main function is to secrete renin. Renin is involved in the regulation of blood pressure. Then the second component of juxtaglomerular apparatus is macula densa. Macula densa are specialized cells of distal convoluted tubule. They lie adjacent to afferent arteriole where the basement membrane of the tubule disappears, and here the lining cells are densely packed. They are in close contact with the juxtaglomerular cells. The macula densa cells are narrow, they are columnar, they are crowded cells, and the nuclei of these cells are crowded and they overlap, hence it is known as macula densa. They monitor the ionic constitution of fluid passing across the tubule, and they also influence the release of renin. Then the third component of juxtaglomerular apparatus is Lassis cell. They are also known as extraglomerular mesangial cell. So they lie near the juxtaglomerular cells. They modify and they form the Lassis cells. These are like a network. These cells are lace-like. They form a network, and these cells show receptors for angiotensin II, and they regulate the glomerular filtration rate. And the Purkinje cells or the cushion is a triangular area between macula densa and afferent efferent arteriole. It is occupied by a group of mesangial cells forming Purkinje. Purkinje means cushion. Now we will see the functioning of juxtaglomerular apparatus. So how the juxtaglomerular apparatus works. So main function is regulation of blood flow. When the blood flow in the kidney is reduced because of low blood pressure, there will be low volume of blood in the afferent arteriole, and this will cause release of renin from the kidney juxtaglomerular cells. Once the renin is released, it will act on angiotensinogen and it will convert it to angiotensinogen 1. It is an enzyme in the lungs which converts angiotensinogen 1 to angiotensinogen 2. Now, angiotensinogen 2 causes contraction of arterioles, and this will increase the blood pressure, and it will also stimulate adrenal cortex to release aldosterone, which causes absorption of sodium and water from the distal convoluted tubule. It will further cause increase in blood pressure, and this is the role of juxtaglomerular cell. Now how the macula densa works? So, because of absorption of sodium and water from distal convoluted tubule under influence of aldosterone from adrenal cortex, the fluid volume in the macula will also increase. This causes pressure in afferent arteriole and juxtaglomerular cell. And once the pressure in the arteriole increases, the juxtaglomerular cells stop secreting renin and it lower downs the blood pressure. In young individual, the kidney diseases are to be ruled out as renal hypertension is very important cause in the young individuals. The renal tubule consists of proximal convoluted tubule, then the Henle's loop of Henle. There is proximal straight tubule, then the loop, and then distal straight tubule. Then we have distal convoluted tubule. The renal tubule receives glomerular filtrate from Bowman's capsule at the proximal convoluted tubule, and then it continues as distal convoluted tubule with the collecting tubule. The renal tubule is lined by a simple epithelium. There is single layered epithelium in the renal tubule. So it consists of proximal convoluted tubule, Henle's loop, distal convoluted tubule. In the Henle's loop, again we have ascending limb and descending limb. So first we will see the proximal convoluted tubule. It is about 40 to 60 micrometer in diameter, and it receives ultrafiltrate from the urinary pole of Bowman's capsule. We know that it is continuation of the Bowman's capsule from its urinary pole. The proximal convoluted tubule is lined by simple cuboidal epithelium and it has microvilli over it which forms the brush border. It has centrally placed spherical nucleus and the cytoplasm is more eosinophilic. It is dark pink. It is having dark pink cytoplasm. Under electron microscopy, we can see in the proximal convoluted tubule there are brush borders. So these are long, closely packed straight microvilli, and there is tight junction over the apical portion of cells. The basal striations are longitudinally oriented and they show, means in the basal striations we can see longitudinally oriented mitochondria, and because of these mitochondria only we have basal striations over the proximal convoluted tubule, and the brush border and basal striation increases the surface area of the cell as its main function is absorption. And the function of PCT is resorption of about 80% of ultrafiltrate, about 150 liters per day. And in the proximal tubule, the sodium ions, potassium ions, then ATPase pump and aquaporin 1 proteins are mainly responsible for resorption of water. It also resorbs amino acids, glucose and polypeptides. In previous slide we have studied proximal convoluted tubule. The same will continue further as thick descending limb of the loop of Henle, or it is also known as proximal straight tubule. It is the communication between proximal convoluted tubule and loop of Henle. So the communication is known as thick descending limb of loop of Henle or proximal straight tubule. The cells of proximal straight tubule are shorter than proximal convoluted tubule, and these cells are less developed brush borders, they have less developed basal lateral foldings, and they have less amount of mitochondria compared to the proximal convoluted tubule. Then we have the loop of Henle, which is also known as ansa nephroni. The length of thin segment of loop of Henle is variable according to the type of nephron. It is longest in juxtamedullary nephron and it is shortest in cortical nephrons. And under routine staining procedure, HNE staining, the thin segment of loop of Henle is lined by simple squamous epithelium with few microvilli. They have pale staining cytoplasm, bulging elongated nucleus. And the distal straight tubule or the thick ascending limb of the loop of Henle is large it has large cuboidal cells, and they are light pink or eosinophilic cytoplasm, and they have apically located nucleus. The function of the Henle's loop is 5% of the fluid is absorbed in this area. Ascending limb actively pumps out chloride and sodium ion passively in the tissue space. Descending limb diffuses water out. Some chloride and sodium ion enter the loop, and the loops of Henle also maintain graded osmolarity of the interstitial fluid of the pyramid. Difference between proximal and distal convoluted tubule is that proximal convoluted tubule begins from Bowman's capsule, and it is more lengthy compared to DCT. It continues with the loop of Henle. It is lined by cuboidal epithelium and it has microvilli. In the PCT, cytoplasm is more acidophilic. Then the proximal convoluted tubule is more convoluted and its main function is resorption. Whereas distal convoluted tubule begins from ascending limb. It is shorter compared to the PCT. It continues with the collecting duct. It is cuboidal, but it does not have microvilli, and it is less acidophilic. The cytoplasm is less acidophilic. It is less convoluted, and the main function of distal convoluted tubule is secretion. Now, if we see point wise, the proximal tubule is longer, distal is shorter. Diameter of proximal tubule is more, it is about 60 micrometer, while the diameter is smaller in DCT, it is 15 to 30 micrometer. Then the main difference in lining epithelium, both have simple cuboidal epithelium, but PCT has microvilli over it, and the DCT does not have microvilli. On routine HME staining, the cytoplasm is densely stained, or it is darker pink in proximal tubule, and it is lighter in the distal convoluted tubule. Then the lumen is star-shaped, irregular in proximal tubule, whereas it is circular or oval, and it is regular in distal tubule. Brush borders are present in the proximal tubule, they are absent in the distal tubule because of absence of microvilli. Basal striations due to mitochondria are present in proximal tubule, they are absent in distal tubule. Collecting tubules have diameter of 40 to 50 micrometer, and they begin in the cortex, renal cortex, as the continuation of distal convoluted tubule, and they proceed in the cortex as medullary rays. In the medullary ray, the collecting tubule joins to form collecting ducts, and the collecting ducts move towards the apex of pyramid, and they join to form papillary duct of Bellini, which opens on the free surface of papillae. And there are three types of collecting ducts: cortical ducts, medullary ducts, and papillary ducts. Cortical are located in medullary ray. Medullary tubules are formed by union of cortical tubules. And when we see the collecting tubules under microscope by routine HME staining, we can see that the circular cross section of collecting tubule and ducts show clear outline of cell. This distinguishes them from the convoluted tubule. And second is, collecting tubules are lined by simple cuboidal epithelium. They do not have brush border, but it becomes columnar as the size of the duct increases. And there are two types of cells in the collecting tubules and ducts. There is principal cell, it is also known as light cell or clear cell, and the principal cells have single cilium, it shows few microvilli, and they have antidiuretic hormone regulated water absorption, aquaporin 2 channels. And if there is any defect in the aquaporin 2 channel gene, it causes diabetes insipidus. Means in diabetes insipidus, large amount of dilute urine is secreted by the patient. So this is because there is defect in the gene which regulates the antidiuretic hormone related water absorption. And also the principal cells or light cells show basal enfoldings in them. Then the second type of cell is dark cell. It is also known as intercalated cell. They are relatively few in number and they do not show basal enfoldings, but they have microvilli. And the function of collecting tubule and ducts is to concentrate, means the final concentration of the urine is done by collecting tubules. They convey and also modify the ultrafiltrate from nephron to minor calyces. In this diagram, we can see different components of a nephron. So the first figure is of Bowman's capsule, in which the outer parietal layer is lined by simple squamous epithelium and the inner visceral layer is lined by podocytes. And the space between the two layers, outer and inner layer, is known as urinary space or Bowman's space. And the Bowman's capsule has a tuft of capillaries in it known as glomerulus, and we can also see the mesangial cells in it. Then the second figure is of proximal convoluted tubule. Here the tubule is lined by simple cuboidal epithelium with microvilli or brush borders over it. And here the cytoplasm is also more eosinophilic. Then the proximal straight tubular thick descending limb is lined by simple cuboidal epithelium and it has microvilli. Then the thin segment or loop is lined by simple squamous epithelium. The thick ascending limb is lined by simple cuboidal epithelium and it is devoid of microvilli. Then the distal convoluted tubule is also lined by simple cuboidal epithelium. It has centrally placed spherical nucleus, but the cytoplasm is less eosinophilic and it does not have brush border or it does not have microvilli in it. The distal convoluted tubule has only simple cuboidal epithelium and there is no microvilli. Then the collecting tubules and ducts are also lined by simple cuboidal, and when the size of the duct increases, then it is lined by simple columnar epithelium. The space between renal tubules and blood vessels forms the renal interstitium. Its volume increases in medulla, and the renal interstitium is formed by scanty amount of connective tissue with fibroblast, then interstitial dendritic cells, collagen fiber, ground substance. In the medulla, the interstitial cells help in synthesis of prostaglandin and prostacyclin, which produces local vasodilatation of renal medulla. Then the interstitial cells also secrete renal erythropoietin, which helps in the maturation of erythrocytes. Here we will see the blood supply of kidney or renal blood vessels. So at the hilum of the kidney, each renal artery divides into lobar arteries, one for each pyramid. Then the lobar arteries divide into two or more interlobar arteries that enter the tissue of the renal column and then runs towards the surface of kidney. At the base of pyramid, the interlobar arteries then divide dichotomously into arcuate arteries, which arch over the base of pyramid. Then the arcuate arteries run at right angle to the parent interlobar arteries. They lie parallel to the renal surface at the junction of pyramid and the cortex, and they give a series of interlobular arteries. Interlobular arteries run through the cortex at right angle to the renal surface and they form subcapsular plexus. The interlobular artery then gives off series of arterioles that enter the glomeruli as afferent arteriole. Then the blood from arterioles circulate through glomerular capillaries and it forms efferent arteriole. Efferent arteriole emerges from the glomeruli and it arises from the cortical glomeruli. It divides into capillaries that surrounds proximal and distal convoluted tubule. These capillaries drain into interlobular veins. Then they pass to the arcuate veins into interlobar veins. Now the efferent arterioles arising from juxtamedullary glomeruli divide into 12 to 25 straight vessels and descend in the medulla as descending vasa recta, and it gives side branches from vasa recta. It joins the capillary plexus and surrounds descending and ascending loop of the Henle and also the collecting tubule. The capillary plexus consists predominantly of vessels running longitudinally. It is drained by ascending vasa recta. It runs upwards parallel to descending vasa recta and it drains in the interlobular or arcuate veins. There are two sets of arterioles and capillaries intervening between renal artery and vein. First capillary system is present in the glomerulus. It is concerned exclusively with the removal of waste products from the blood. It does not supply oxygen to the renal tissue. An exchange of gases between the blood and renal tissue is entirely through second set of capillary system present around the tubule. And it has been held that interlobular arteries divide renal cortex into small lobules, and each lobule is defined as a region of cortex between two adjacent interlobular arteries, as we have seen in our early slides. And the medullary ray contains collecting duct. It runs vertically through the middle of the lobule, and the glomeruli lie in a zone adjacent to the arteries, while other part of the nephron lies near the lobule. Ureter is a mucomuscular tube and it conveys urine from renal pelvis to the urinary bladder, and its length is about 25 to 35 centimeter. It has three layers. Inner towards the lumen is mucous membrane, then a thick smooth muscle coat, and outermost is the adventitia. So the lining epithelium of the ureter is again urothelium or transitional epithelium. It is 4 to 5 cell thick. It rests on the lamina propria. Lamina propria has connective tissue layer, and the mucosa of the ureter shows numerous longitudinal folds. Hence, the lumen of the ureter is star-shaped. It is star-shaped in appearance due to presence of numerous longitudinal folds. Then the second layer is smooth muscle coat. So the smooth muscles are arranged in three layers. Inner is the longitudinal, middle is circular, and again outer is longitudinal layer. These layers are not distinctly marked from each other. The outer longitudinal layer is present only in lower 1/3 of the ureter. When we trace above, the circular muscle surrounding the renal papillae exerts milking action. It helps in squeezing of the urine from the ducts of minor calyces. And when we trace the smooth muscle below, the outer two layers continue with the detrusor muscle of the bladder, and the inner longitudinal forms the muscle of Bell. The muscle cells of the ureter intercommunicate with each other and they form syncytium. So the ureter has syncytium. The wave of peristalsis passes downwards through the muscle and it does not depend on the nerve supply. Then the third layer is the adventitia. Ureter is embedded in retroperitoneal connective tissue and that forms the covering or the layer of ureter called adventitia. It mainly contains adipose tissue, blood vessels, nerves and lymphatics. The urinary bladder is a mucomuscular reservoir of urine, and it receives urine from ureter. So there are two ureteric openings in the urinary bladder, and then it stores the urine, and the stored urine is then expelled through the urethra to the exterior. The wall of the urinary bladder is formed by three layers. Inner is the mucus layer, middle is the thickest one formed by the smooth muscle, and the outer is serous layer. So the mucous membrane is lined by transitional epithelium. Transitional epithelium is also known as urothelium. It shows apical dome-shaped umbrella cells on the luminal surface, and some of these cells may be binucleated. In empty bladder, the cells of transitional epithelium are cuboidal in shape and they bulge into the lumen. When we see under electron microscopy, the superficial cells are covered by a thick plaque. There is modified apical plasma membrane, and this plaque takes a dark eosinophilic stain, and it makes the urinary bladder resistant to the toxic effect of urine. It makes it impermeable to the urine. Then the lamina propria has superficial dense irregular and deep loose connective tissue. It also contains some mucus gland near the internal urethral orifice. When the bladder is empty, it shows numerous mucosal folds, and when the bladder distends, the mucosal folds will disappear. Now there are few points regarding transitional epithelium often asked in the viva. So the thickness of transitional epithelium in empty bladder, means when the bladder is in relaxed state, is about 6 cell layer, and on distension, when the bladder is stretched, the thickness of the transitional epithelium is about 3 cell layer because of stretching of the cells. When the bladder is in relaxed state, the superficial cells are umbrella shaped, and when the bladder is stretched, the superficial layer has simple squamous epithelium. Urothelium is urine proof. It is resistant to the toxic substances present in the urine, and the urothelium has the ability to change shape and distension. It undergoes change in shape with distension and relaxation of urinary bladder. Urothelium can withstand osmotic changes caused by variation in the concentration of urine. Urothelium also maintains permeability barrier due to presence of plaque on the luminal surface, and it is the urinary bladder is devoid of muscularis mucosa. Second layer of urinary bladder is muscle coat. The muscle present in urinary bladder is known as detrusor muscle, and it is the thickest layer of the urinary bladder. The thick muscle coat that forms a meshwork. Here the fibers are running in all direction, and usually we have inner outer longitudinal layer, and the middle is running circularly or obliquely. Detrusor muscle contraction is responsible for emptying of the bladder, and at the junction of the bladder with urethra, the smooth muscle fibers are arranged circularly to form sphincter vesicae or internal sphincter. Then the third layer is serous layer. Only the superior surface and a part of posterior surface is covered by peritoneum or serosa, and rest of the surface is covered by adventitia. Now, again, when we see the gross anatomy and see the interior of the urinary bladder, we see the trigone of the bladder. On each side there is ureteric opening, and towards the apex we have urethral opening. So it is triangular in shape, and the mucosa of this trigone is thin and it is firmly adherent to the muscle coat. The trigone is derived from absorption of mesonephric duct, whereas the remaining part of the bladder is formed from cloaca. And the second thing to be known is reflux of urine from urinary bladder to the ureter is prevented. As the bladder contracts, the ureter is compressed. There is physiological sphincter. clinical aspects related to the urinary bladder. So there is one embryological term known as ectopia vesicae. So it is a developmental deficiency of anterior abdominal wall and anterior wall of the urinary bladder. So as the anterior abdominal wall is not developed, the interior of bladder is exposed. So this condition is known as ectopia vesicae. Then cystitis, wherever the term itis come, it means inflammation, and cystitis is thus inflammation of urinary bladder. Then urinary stones may develop in the urinary bladder because of crystallization of urinary waste products. Urethra is a mucomuscular tube. It carries urine from urinary bladder to the exterior. In males it is about 20 centimeter long, and in females it is short and just 4 centimeter in length. And it has 3 layers: mucous membrane, submucosa and muscular coat. So the mucous membrane has lining epithelium of pseudostratified columnar, except adjacent to the urinary bladder it is lined by transitional epithelium, and near its external opening it is lined by stratified squamous epithelium. Then the submucosa consists of loose connective tissue, and the muscle coat has inner longitudinal, outer circular coat of smooth muscle. The terminal part of urethra is surrounded by striated muscle fibers that forms the external urethral sphincter. Lastly, coming to the applied aspect of the kidney. So there is a term called albuminuria. Presence of albumin in the urine due to increased permeability of glomerular endothelium is known as albuminuria. And most common cause of albuminuria is hypertension, vascular injury and bacterial infection. Then there is Bright's disease or glomerulonephritis. So infection of renal glomeruli is known as glomerulonephritis. The nephrotic syndrome is a defect in glomerular basement membrane. There is disorganization of podocyte process, and it causes massive proteinuria, hypoalbuminemia. Then there is edema, hyperlipidemia, lipiduria and hypercoagulability in the nephrotic syndrome. Then there is hydronephrosis. Hydronephrosis is the dilatation of renal pelvis and calyces, mostly due to obstruction of urine outflow. And hydronephrosis develops if the pelviureteric sphincters are incompetent. The ureterocele is cystic dilatation of terminal part of ureter within the urinary bladder wall, and it can be visualized by cystoscope. Then cystitis is the inflammation of urinary bladder due to bacterial or fungal infection, and it is more common in females because they have shorter urethra, and it's liable to fecal contamination and mechanical trauma. Then the urinary tract infection is also common, and again it is more common in females due to short urethra. Then comes the acute nephritic syndrome, when the glomerular capillary lumen is blocked by either increase in the number or size of the endothelial cells. It is known as acute endocapillary glomerulonephritis, and there is rise in blood pressure, rise in blood nitrogen, and there can be occasional hematuria and edema. Then there is an immunological disorder known as mesangial glomerulonephritis. Here the immune complex gets deposited in the mesangium, and it converts the glomerular tuft to a cellular spherical mass by hyalinization. Then there is diabetes insipidus. The patient passes large volume of dilute urine because of failure of water resorption by distal convoluted tubule, and this is again due to permanent absence of antidiuretic hormone. Then failure of excretion of hydrogen ion and potassium ion results in acidosis and hyperkalemia in the blood, and it is known as renal failure.